Welcome back, everyone. Hope you will be fine wherever you are listening from. Uh, Today's topic is something where it seems a lot of bet have been placed in the past few weeks, few months as well, and it's a very, very interesting topic. Although overall in the media you will say it's the Ukraine war that is at the center stage, but in the boys' circles, it is being whispered that war between Afghanistan under Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, or more commonly what we refer to as the Afghan Taliban, and Pakistan is on the card. Uh, in politics, we don't have anything like Bet 365, but between the scholars and researchers, this thing is the hot cake right now. War, in any manner, if you're a historian, if you're a researcher, it shouldn't fantasize you. It, it shouldn't be something which is worth putting a bet on, because at the end of the day, it brings destruction. And the region has already paid its due part. Talking of Afghanistan, we don't need to go into a lot of history or anything. It's endless struggle from the last almost 5 decades. Somewhere in the mid of 1970s, it started from very progressive, prosperous country. It slipped into external uh, maneuvered problems, starting from Soviet Union, then the global jihad, and then later the way we saw things after 9/11. But anyhow, we'll try to cover this topic as soon as possible for you and your understanding. And we won't be touching the historical context, who never recognize each other, what is the dual line, whatever it is. That's pretty common thing. We are concentrating on how things are right now and how do we see in the coming future. So our timeline starts with 2022. That's pretty important because that's where officially the Talibs, under the banner of Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, they recaptured from the coalition uh, post 9/11. The US and the allies, they tried in vain for 21 years, the longest war of US, and pretty close to 2016-17, the realization was pretty much there that there is no solution in terms of war in Afghanistan, and that was wise decision on behalf of them. And then we see the Doha Agreement and everything. It was a systematic withdrawal, a graceful exit, as you can see. But when they have come undisputed, because there is no challenge to their military might or supremacy within Afghanistan. All the forces that were established by the West, and they befooled the Afghan people because that was a golden chance. The problem lies post 2001. So I recall right after the unfortunate incident of 9/11, uh, there was an independent documentary where a researcher went on main New York pathways, and the context was to ask Americans post 9/11. My regrets, I believe I said after 9/11, before 9/11, of their awareness about two countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan. And a large proportion of them was simply uh, un, it seemed like they've never heard of the two countries, what they are. And when 9/11 happened, out of nowhere, this thing came into the entire Western front, that there's a country just like they've seen in the cowboys movies, Wild Wild West. There is no control. People are nomads. A medieval doctrine is practiced there, and they are now threatening the global peace. They are striking the symbol of prosperity all across the world. They're terrorists, everything. All right. And then Pakistan emerged as its neighbor, long forgotten post withdrawal of Soviets from Afghanistan, as the troubled child with a nuclear bomb and it's sitting right next to Afghanistan and they can make an alliance, something like this. So this was the time after toppling of the of the Taliban government in 2001, and when they were on the run back to the mountains and the refuge in tribal areas. That's a reality, documented, whatever it is. So there was time that the West had to invest honestly on the Afghan institutes, Afghan Human Development Index, human capital, and ensuring that it is a symbol of prosperity and revival, the way they did through Marsh Plan in Europe. Example, Germany, best example, the notorious child, patron of the two wars, the bloody wars in the shape of Second and First World War. But when the reconstruction came, it became a symbol of progression. That's right in front of you. Same is the case with Japan. But that thing never happened in Afghanistan. Why? Seems like it wasn't that much important. They just saw it as some place distant where they will drop bombs and then they will start experimenting. Sometime it was containment of China, sometime it was the denuclearization of Pakistan, making inroads into Central Asia to counter Russia. All sort of experiments were done in Afghanistan as if it was a human lab. That's actually what happened. And what happened in reality was that those Afghan which saw the new dawn, the young lot, that is, the millennials, they developed a hope of in the new Afghanistan, the development will come. They will resurface on the map of the world. Regimes like Karzai, Ghani, and the warlords in the shape of, there's so many names, like Rashid Dostum, barbarian person who has committed genocide. These were given powers and a blind eye was turned to the institutionalized corruption, and it became a hotbed of all international actors playing their proxy wars, whether it was India investing to destabilize Pakistan, whether it was Pakistan which was countering the insurgency happening inside its border through Afghanistan by putting up pressure on the Western Bloc, or it was the Chinese, or it was the Iranians, you name it, everybody was there. And why? Because the one who was leading the charge, the Americans, they let it become a human lab, as I explained it before. And this remains the biggest tragedy of the 21st century as per the first half is concerned. The stolen dreams of Afghan, which they deserved, a progressive, democratic, free society, that was taken away by none other. There was no Taliban. Always revert back to the basic book of insurgency, uh, guerrilla warfare, right from the time of Mao, who have led these things, and other leaders. Local support is the fuel. And why that local support came? Because of minority, and that minority had nothing bad in it. They were very progressive people. The criminal elements were chosen to lead the nation, and they marginalized one of the majority, that is the Pashtuns, and they saw their protection in the shape of Talibs, and that's why this warfare continued. Now, Pakistan post 9/11 in Afghanistan. Now, when the Soviets were in Afghanistan, Pakistan, out of necessity, assumed the lead role of leading the liberation, and that was done by entire world, money flowing, weapon flowing, everything. And then when the Soviets withdrew, and then later the Cold War ended, it was somewhere our responsibility and Iranian responsibility, which both countries could never come up with a unanimous decision over this thing. And that has more to do with the wars in Middle East between Saudi-led bloc and the Iranians that never established a peace, whether it was Ahmad Shah Massoud Northern Alliance or the Talibs. This war continued till 1995, and from 95 till 2001 we saw a state there. No uh, words to appreciate how things were there. At least there was an order there, but it was for sure lacking a lot of credentials which you require in a civilized society, no doubt about it. And based on that, post 9/11, it was an entirely different scenario how to manage these things. A lot of sympathy. This is a very, how do you call it, emotional nation, Pakistan, which attaches itself very, uh, how to put these words, in a very short notice they attach themselves from national interest to the interest of the Muslim world. That's how it is. So it's very easy to incite religious sentiment, and that's what exactly happened post 9/11. That when the bombardment and the liberation of Afghanistan in the eyes of the West started, the backdrop or the ripple effect were felt in Pakistan, and the religious parties, they all started pressurizing the government. So that was a tough equation for the then leadership led by former general and later the so-called democratically elected president Pervez Musharraf, and he was between a rock and a hard place, and this equation initially was going his way. The liberal voices were winning because it was all about reconstruction of Afghanistan into a stable, civilized country. But when the dirty work started of all the actors pulling their interest in Afghanistan and in the tribal agencies of Pakistan bordering Afghanistan, a full-on militant campaign started. There was no way out. They realized, Pakistan, that they are up against something which was unimaginable. They were fighting an invisible enemy because they were like us. They shared the same ethnicity with like half, if not 35% of Pakistan, which is the Pashtun, and they have centuries old tradition. We were very friendly with them. It was like a borderless state. The countrymen used to go there, do the business, come back. Same was their case, and out of nowhere, the militancy has been born, and they are accusing Pakistani forces to be the allies or the implementer of the Western agenda, and they were like in a full-blown war which they have never seen. It happened in Balochistan somewhere in 1970s, but nothing of this magnitude that started happening. So then the alarm bells rang, and Pakistanis had no option. They had to safeguard their interest. They kept on imposing to Americans in the West that what is the issue of settling the Indians, knowing well that they are harming our interest. If the voice comes that they have their right to decide in a sovereign manner, well, that excuse can settle in Washington, because if Cuba was a sovereign state under Castro and the Soviets said that we will install bombs there, why did you put the entire world on the verge of war? There was no damn reason. That's a very simple equation. So as Cuba was the backyard, same is the case with Afghanistan when it comes to Pakistan. You cannot have a country with whom you have traditional issues right from the partition, your establishment in 1947, to settle itself right in your neighborhood, which is so vulnerable. And this is where Pakistani concerns were totally ignored, and the seeds of this entire issue were practically sown. This shouldn't have happened. That was the singular biggest mistake done by undermining the interest of Pakistan, and then rest is history. Spring offensive, winter withdrawal, gaining grounds, returning. Now that was a cat and mouse game. Everybody knew nobody can win Afghanistan in terms of the visions seen post 9/11, because uh, it was virtually impossible. The Talibs were very well trained, they were well accustomed, they had the public support, and it was very easy for them to hit and run. And that's what continued. And by 2015-16, the sanity had prevailed. There was, they were clear, the Western Bloc was clear, led by Americans, that it is time to just clap around and leave Afghanistan in what is usually termed as the graceful exit, the graceful departure. And then Pakistan, of course, was seen by all as the party which will manage everything. Now, strategically, we Pakistan has the tendency to influence Afghanistan. There are many reasons for that, strategic and traditional. It's very much on the card, but the problem was when US agreed with Afghanistan, Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, the withdrawal plan, and that's why it happened in such a smooth manner. Apart from the tragic scenes we saw on Kabul runway, no one should have been subject to this. The way people were running after the planes, running for their lives, for their future, this shouldn't have happened. Otherwise, on military terms, everything was settled. Like it was a perfect roadmap. They will start capturing, they will start moving in. When they reach the gates of Afghanistan, the government, instead of negotiating terms, it will just vanish away. Ghani, I'm not going into conspiracy how much he took with him. That's not our debate. But anyhow, that's again the biggest flaw. Just like the British Empire, while retreating from subcontinent, they left Kashmir uh, as an issue which will never be settled. The same you see in the shape of Israel in the Middle East. The same they did with Afghanistan, left it after being there for 21 years, and while going ensuring that we leave an equation which is not to be solved in the near future. And that's what happened. What about the Afghan reconstruction? What will be the system of governance? How are you going to accept the force with whom you have signed agreements? Now, after giving them everything and without bringing them into a set of rules of engagement, there is nothing you can do. All you can do is raise alarm. Women have been stopped from education, uh, human rights violation are occurring because there is no set of engagement. There is nothing practically which was decided apart from that US will exit and Talibs will come. That's it. Nothing else. Leave it to the regional players, and exactly the same which happened after Soviet withdrawal. So post 9/11, it is a disaster. Post US withdrawal in 2022, it's a highway that is leading to nowhere as of now. So the Taliban, while they were on the mountains, they were a force for sure. But when you come into what is called governance, that's an entirely different thing. They have to unify. Now that's a big problem. How can you unify? There is a lot of discontent, a lot of ethnic issues, traditional issues. The world has virtually uh, considered you as a barricade state where you won't go out, nobody will come in, and it will stay like this. This doesn't happen. So this, how are they going to feed the people? The issues that are faced in Afghanistan are out of proportion. So not only that, there are remnants of international disorder also available there, and that is Islamic State of Khorasan, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. These are all available there. They are present there in areas which are pockets, but they have tendency to disrupt the peace anywhere. Pakistan is not the only place. It is the global thing that we are talking about. Remember, in 9/11, elements sitting there originating from various countries in Middle East ended up blasting twin towers, and this is a reality even now. So right now the impact is faced by Pakistan, but this doesn't end there. Now, what is the problem with Taliban right now? Number one, to establish a governance there, to be economically viable, and to to eradicate that international isolation they have been put into after being accepted as a legitimate power in Afghanistan. So, based on that, this issue is somehow uh, what you can say uh, being given them into as a legacy that they are living with this problem, and for that the solution in short term might somehow uh, challenge their existence, because world need to realize that when once you have entered into a relationship with them, that is for withdrawal and leaving a country to them, then you have to engage with them. This cannot be a place which is like in centuries ago, Great Wall of China has been built to get them isolated and they will sit inside it and they will flourish their culture. That this can't happen. So this lawlessness, this country which is virtually isolated, will have nothing on its own. So this will give rise to these sort of problems in the shape of TDP, Islamic State, and this will continue. And another thing is that the burden of responsibility, who is going to shoulder this reconstruction, or what we can say, the reintroduction of Afghanistan into mainstream global order. That burden for Afghanistan, they are looking towards firstly into Pakistan and then into uh, Islamic countries in Middle East, and that is something which is nobody is ready to take, because it will require a multilateral effort. So the first thing, we are seeing the problem emerging on Pakistani border in the last few months. This issue really got I won't say out of control, but out of proportion. This disturbances on the border and its spillover into Pakistani territories, with frequent rise in terrorist attack, which we are presently going through. It's massive. It's striking till the capital, Islamabad, just a few weeks back. So this thing will come over to Pakistan, but that is one thing. It has a tendency to go even further from that, unless the world sees it. Internal factors, the pressure is there, feeding the people, mobilizing the economy. They have huge potential. The Chinese are already there. They have eyed the resources, the potential, everything is there. We shouldn't say that there are diamonds available there today. Like when the Americans went in, it was like this. But they have the potential. It can be anything. It can be out of the trade they can have, or being the strategic position, or the reserves unexplored. It can be anything, but the potential is there. If a serious effort is put, it can benefit the local people. They can get back into a norm, and looking 5 years beyond this point, there can be a time when saner voices emerge, a little tolerance emerge from the ruling what should I say, ruling group, ruling party. It emerges. There's a system of democracy. After all, the world has accepted. The, shall I quote something? It will be unfriendly to do this, but there are various sectors which are not acceptable in many manners. Israel, what democracy that kills unarmed civilian every day? We don't need a democracy like this. Nobody in the world needs that. But still, it is part of UN. It is part of everything, and like it is center of attention. The world has dealt with Libya under Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, then there are other problem areas like North Korea. So it is the engagement that delivers. That is very important. You cannot just walk away from engagement. So 5 years down the line, the world can see an integrated Afghanistan with soft elements coming up. They evolve their own system, which is acceptable to the world, and it is a responsible member of the world. War, if it is a bet, I'll put my bet against it. And why? Because there is no logic to it. uh, War between Afghanistan and Pakistan, based on what? The most pressing issue between Afghanistan and Pakistan is for centuries been, not centuries now, that's a overstatement, from independence has been the Pashtun areas, tribal areas with Afghanistan not accepting the line. The problem is, apart from the barricade being broken for some places, this problem has not emerged. That is not the problem. This is where the state and state go to war. The problem is of non-state actors which are passing into Pakistan, or they have sleeper cells here which are being activated and they are managing this thing. So it is more of a pressure tactic from, it can be directly from the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, because you would see these groups, they became a necessity for each other. I'm referring to the Afghan Taliban and the other elements in the tribal areas of Pakistan. They became a necessity for each other, because when the onslaught used to come from the Western Bloc in Afghanistan, they were given refuge or lifeline in those unruled areas. And same was the case when the Pakistanis used to push these terrorist elements, and they used to pass over to Afghanistan and find their refuge there, and still they operate from there. So considering this thing, it is something which is a very tough question for Afghanistan. And if they have the will, which I foresee as sane elements, they will definitely, the last thing they want themselves to be labeled at this stage is to be supporters of any international or regional terrorist movement. Uh, that is out of question. So presently, it is something which is more of a, what they will reflect as their ace card, that if something happens in Afghanistan, a global effort comes in towards toppling the Afghan government, they have that card playing with them. However, they have to rain down on them. That is out of question that these things will survive. It will continue. They will continue attacking Pakistani forces and the locals, and they will remain at peace. That won't happen, because if it goes out of proportion, then Pakistan will have no option but to go for a unilateral action against them. And to be very precise, under diplomatic norms, the Taliban will be very happy if at some stage these elements are totally wiped out, and they do not share anything with it apart from that they had not patronized these elements and they have been eliminated in one way or the other. However, what is important is the world has to understand what Afghanistan is, where the problem lies, and inclusion into global order under some rules and regulation is very important. Unless it is done, this problem will remain. We will continue to work over this as the situation evolves, but as of now, all those putting bets and looking curiously toward this thing, especially some very interested regional powers, this thing is not going the way they are assuming, and hopefully peace will prevail regionally. We foresee a time both countries are not a threat to each other. The borders, they flow with trade, with people, with visitors. There is no harm to each other. Anybody can come there. People can have life there. The people of Afghanistan deserve prosperity, peace, and progression. They have this right. They've already suffered a lot. And what better than Pakistan being one of the main contributors to that peace? Economically, it's one of the hardest time Pakistan has been hit, but hopefully things will overcome. World has to realize that united, they all prosper, leaving these seeds of discontent and issues. It always harm the global peace, and uh, we want to see a progressive regional participation of Afghanistan, unlimited talent. The world needs Afghanistan, and the Taliban needs to understand that in order to absorb themselves into the world order, they have to come up, which is different from the way they were before 2001. There is no room for any actor in this age to be a patron of uh, any terrorist or insurgency or any uh, breakdown in world order in terms of peace. We wish everyone a very all the very best into 2023. We shouldn't come across such types of issues, and hopefully we'll be back with another topic very soon. Look after yourself.